Hi, this is Cassie McCoy with Master Teacher Project and Better Lesson. And today we're looking at interpreting the Turnitin.com results that students are going to have when they upload their research paper draft. When we submit our essays, you want to make sure that your works cited is copied and pasted at the bottom of the essay. I prefer students to download their essay from Google Drive as a docx file. I found that the formatting stays more consistent that way. So they're going to go up to File, Save As, docx file. Then they will upload that into the argumentative research paper assignment that I've set up on my end, and then name it with the paper's title that we just came up with. After it uploads, it's going to show them a preview. They complete the submission after they look at the preview. I always encourage students to look at the preview, make sure it's your paper, the one you want to submit. And after their submission, they should get an email that says, hey, you've submitted this, great job. What you're going to get from this Turnitin.com submission, one, it's going to generate immediately an originality report, which helps to highlight some possible plagiarism issues, but please be aware that if you get that back and you look at all the instances, it does not mean definitely that you are plagiarism free. That's still something that you as a student, you as a researcher, need to check your entire paper for. So this is just going to highlight the things that it knows about. While the internet's amazing, it's not all-knowing. The second thing it gives you is a Grademark report. That's only going to come up after the teacher views the essays, and that takes a couple of minutes. What that'll show you is purple boxes that appear on your paper, and it'll show you grammar issues. Sometimes it highlights things that aren't grammar issues that you look at and you're like, no, wait, that's right. And that's fine. That's where I think critical thinking comes in. You have to evaluate your language. It's still a great tool, even though it's not perfect. And finally, the rubric's attached in there so you can view the rubric and see how you'll be graded and what is weighted more heavily than other things. When you're using the Originality report, the first thing students are going to do is they're going to look up here at the similarity percentage. And the first question you'll get is, oh, what is this under? Does this need to be 0? Does that mean I haven't plagiarized anything? Is it under 10%, 20%? My answer is the number doesn't really matter unless it's really, really, really high or 0. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot because of the types of results and types of matches you can get. The other thing, in the match overviews, you'll see some of them come from student papers because Turnitin.com utilizes a repository where people from all over the country submit things, and then those papers get indexed so that they can cross-check them later. Students sometimes look at these results and they think, oh, well, I didn't use that Florida State paper, so I know that I didn't plagiarize from there. And what I always tell them is that just because you didn't use that paper, I'm not saying that you did, probably what's happened is you've used information that that person has also used. So you want to double check those results to make sure that they're either quoted appropriately or that if you paraphrased it, that you cited it. It's really just a heads up. It's probably that somebody else used the same information. Now, I uploaded a personal paper, so it's an APA style. Ignore that, but I just didn't want to show student names. One of the things you'll see highlighted is direct quotes. And it won't catch all of your direct quotes, but students, if you see a direct quote that's been highlighted, if you have quotation marks around both sides, and you have this lovely citation, again, this is APA, ignore it, but you should have an in-text citation there. If you have those two things, you're perfect. Don't worry about it. This is not plagiarism. This is great. If you get highlights of anything that is not directly quoted, you need to investigate each instance. So I see this has some, dappling. I want to check to make sure that I did not plagiarize this paraphrase. So in order to do that, I look at the source number up here. I'm going to scroll down the list, find 35, click on it. So this is source 35. And if I actually click on that source, it's going to pop up like the context for that quote in this source. And then I read through the context and my own information. And clearly this is talking about, two different things, two different contexts. This is not plagiarized. But students need to go through every single one of them to make sure. Another thing that you get, sometimes when you click on that match breakdown, so source 3 here, it says, ooh, maybe plagiarized. I click on source 3, and here I have a whole list. That means that this little tidbit, like that wordage, showed up in multiple sources. Now, it's not going to let you view the student papers, but it will let you view like the internet sources. So you can click on those and check to make sure that you didn't, use those. If you look through that list and you see a source that you did use, definitely click on that because that would signal some paraphrase issues. If you have highlights in the works cited that say, hey, this is plagiarized, they're completely fine because that just tells you, hey, you actually cited that correctly. Somebody else cited it in the same way. Totally fine. One thing that would concern me is if your works cited had a large chunk of the same source, like several references came from the same source. That would lead me to question, like, why did you pick out of all the internet? Why did you pick the same sources as that person? That would be concerning for me. But otherwise, ignore it. The Grademark report, that's the one that only comes up after I click on student papers. So this paper has been submitted. I click on it. I have to wait for it to pop up and load and little purple boxes to appear. After that happens on the teacher end, students can see it. What this shows you, students will see little purple boxes that show up over their text. This shows you possible grammar issues. It does not mean that all of them are actually grammar issues. So like this, the personnel issues of recruiting, hiring, blah, blah, blah. I really did mean personnel. But since personnel and personal are often confused, it marks it for you as like a maybe issue. So students will want to click through each of these and make sure that they have not actually made an error, like read their sentence, use their grammar knowledge. If they're not sure of what one of these things mean, like confused, my students are often like, well, why is it confused? And then I have to explain, no, it means it's a confused way of saying it. If they click on the purple box, it'll show them more in depth what might be wrong with it. And if you still don't understand what might be wrong with it, if you click on the View Handbook link, it's going to show them more in depth of what it is, like a little lesson on that grammar issue. This PV, passive voice, I love the handbook link for that, and I actually steal it to teach with sometimes. For today, what I want students to do and not do, first off, don't just put quotes around stuff that's highlighted if you don't know if it's plagiarized or not. Like, just because it says that it's plagiarized, air quotes there, doesn't mean that it is. So please just evaluate each of your sources. Secondly, don't change your citations to match what the originality report says. I've had students actually go in and say student paper in their sources. That's just foolish. Don't do that. 3, don't just ignore matches from sources that you didn't use, like other student papers, because as I said earlier, that might be a sign of a bigger problem. And 4, don't just add commas or other Grademark things without understanding if it's really a problem. You need to evaluate those things, not just take it at face value. Things that you should do, definitely use this list of resources to figure out some possible errors. Also, remember to review your entire paper because it's just going to show you some of the things, not all of the things. It's not a perfect tool. I would pop up your draft in another window and use them side by side and make those changes while you're checking them. And also check out the rubric before you leave this to see how different things, like different pieces of the assignment, are weighted. If there's any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, we will get started.